ready to play now. Put me in the game now. I came here to prove it, I'm ready to do it, I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now, I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage and I'm ready to break out. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. This time, like the last time, you better get ready to race to the top. I'm ready to do this, show you what the truth is. I step on the field, it's time to get real, I'm feeling so ruthless. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down, hand over my crown, hand over my heart. I do this for my town, I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. Yeah. So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made of. Get in the game, your moment of fame, show them what you made of. It's time that we stand up, it's time that we man up. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up. My time, nothing can keep me from reaching the top. This time, like
this is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going with the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
to the front bumper, and he hits him again now. Rayon Fowler into the outside wall.
He's going to pass nearly 3 cars down that front straightaway, and he's going to get them all done with. What amazing.
Lee to the inside goes Logan Cloudman is going to touch in. Pit press sideways. What a save.
Look to the outside as Cronkite goes off. De Jong into second place.
Going for the switchback. Oh, pinpoint driving.
It's howling down to the inside.
He's trying this contact though.
Slide left of the racetrack. Chris Renner drives it back down underneath, and he takes that second spot right back. Joker goes to Garrett Lowe.
Garrett Lowe should take victory with all that contact.
He's going to try and make the move around the outside the parabolica. That's not going to work, but he's going to try and get the cut back here. Get the run out the parabolica. That's beautifully done there. Makashube, there's a little bit of door banging as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Lockie Mansell. Welcome to SimSpeed TV for Week 2, Season 3 of the just-ended iRacing series where the best names in real-life motorsport compete head-to-head with the brightest talents from the online world. And with Real Life Motorsport on hold for the time being, we've got a healthy contingent of big names in the field for this week's edition, which will feature the Dallara F317 open wheeler at the classic Silverstone circuit. Joining me in commentary tonight, it's a very good evening to Ryan Jones. And Ryan, this week it's all about high downforce cars on a circuit with fast flowing corners. And just to make things interesting, we've got a new damage model tonight as well.
Good evening, Lockie. Good evening, everyone. You're right. This race is going to be wild. And you wanted some more action, some more fun here for Just Send It. We went through a weekly series. It was supposed to be bi-weekly, but we've come back. We're capitalizing on everyone being stuck at home. And today is going to be an absolute doozy. Half the corners on this track are flat out. I discovered in some testing. Turn 1, notably, not flat out in qualifying up at Cops, but in the race, you can run wide there without getting to slow down. So you just hold it flat, over the bumps, steady as she goes. But if you get it slightly wrong and hit a bump the wrong way, going to be debris strewn across the track because of that new damage model you mentioned.
Indeed, and it'll be interesting to see how that damage model plays out because it's quite realistic. And if the cars make contact with one another or with any of the walls or barriers on the circuit, you're going to see wheels parting company with the cars just like you would in real life. So drivers going to have to be a little bit careful of their machinery. We know how delicate open wheelers generally are, and wheel-to-wheel contact is not really something that you want to become too heavily engaged in. So it'll be something for all of the drivers to keep in mind this evening. But as I mentioned, a big contingent of real-world drivers in the field tonight, and that is because while real-life motorsport is temporarily suspended, we've got some of the big series. We've seen that Supercars have announced that they're going to run an A-Series, and also the Australian racing group ARG, which runs the TCR Australia Series, the S5000 Series, and a couple of other categories, including Touring Car Masters and the Australian Trans Am Series. They've announced that they're going to be running an A-Series during this break in real-world competition as well. So we've got a lot of real-life drivers taking the opportunity to get some practice and get some track time as part of the Just Send It series, which is great to see.
Certainly, and on the topic of that ARG series, big props to our director and the man behind it all at SimSpeed. He's got the opportunity to work on that broadcast and a big part in getting it all up and running as well. So big props to him for helping get that one on board. And on the topic of the drivers, well, we've got some huge names in this race, don't we, Lockie? I mean, Scott McLaughlin, two-time defending Supercars champ. We've got Anton De Pasquale in there as well, Nick Percat, Scott Pike, just to name a few.
Indeed, so that's, without even thinking about it, 4 full-time Supercars drivers that are going to take part in tonight's race. But looking a bit further down the field, some of the other drivers that, as I mentioned, are getting some track time for the ARG series as well. So you've got names like Jay Hansen, who runs in the TCR Australia series. George Maydicky, he's gone out to get some time as well. We see him competing in the Australian Trans Am series. Nick Carroll, who was one of the front runners in the Super 3 series last year. Declan Fraser, who's a race winner in the Toyota 86 series and had a run in the TCR car at the Australian Grand Prix. Some really, really high profile and very accomplished real-world racing drivers that are in the field tonight.
Certainly is, and with a fast track like this, what we're going to see today is a lot of drafting and slipstreaming coming into play, and at the end of some of these straights, we're going to see potentially up to 3 and 4 wide, aren't we, Lockie? Because as you found out, you've got to make those moves, but the slipstream effect, it's very possible and likely we're going to see huge packs of cars coming down these straights for even to the lead of the race.
Particularly the hangar straight, I think. One of the things that the drivers we'll have to be mindful of, though, is the turbulent air that gets created when they get close to the car in front, and particularly through some of the direction changes where they're going to be travelling at quite high speeds through corners, especially through Maggots and Beckett's turns 2, 3, 4 and 5. They will find that if they're too close to the car in front, then the balance of their car might be affected by the aero wash that gets generated by these open wheelers. So few things there that the drivers are going to have to be a bit mindful of, but it is Just Send It. It's all about the big sends, the big overtakes, and as per normal, we'll be keeping an eye on all of the drivers and making a judgment about the best send of the night, the biggest failed send of the night, and also the best postman, the driver who makes up the most positions from where they qualified.
You see already, drivers running into some issues here in the warm-up. That's Percat gone for a little spin cycle there, and now Scott Pye's having some fun as well. And for this series in general, for anyone that's new to Just Send It, tuning in for the first time, keen to see how some of these drivers go, this is very much a laid-back series, Lachlan. It's not a series that we put a massive amount of preparation into as a driver. You're just out there to have a bit of fun, and I mean, you've got awards for the biggest send. I mean, that pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
Indeed it does, and I think more than that as well, and this is the big selling point of Just Send It, is it is an opportunity for drivers who excel in sim racing or maybe are going well in some of the junior development categories here in Australian motorsport to have the opportunity to race well against big names like Scott McLaughlin and Nick Percat and Anton De Pasquale. I mean, there's no other sport where you can go head to head with the established stars. And I think when you look at the situation that the world is in at the moment, the fact that a number of major sporting competitions have had to shut down altogether, the big advantage of motorsport is that you can simulate it. Try simulating a rugby league match or an AFL match or a cricket game. You just couldn't do it. But in motorsport, it is possible to recreate exactly the kind of environment that you get on a racetrack from the comfort of your own home.
Not even that, but the opportunity to relive days of years gone past as well. I mean, this particular track we're running now is, of course, Silverstone, but it's Silverstone of circa 2008. So this is a layout and a track surface that doesn't really exist anymore, and which is great to see. And, you know, another example would be Oran Park, which just flat out does not exist. That lives on in our racing too. So not only can you go out there and recreate real-life Grand Prix, but you can relive days gone, and it's good fun to head out here onto the old Silverstone circuit, which is also free to anyone that joins our racing too, which is a nice little perk as well.
There is Scott McLaughlin on screen in the DJR Team Penske liveried Dallara Formula 3 car. So just to explain a bit about these cars. So obviously in real life we have the FIA Formula 3 series, but the cars in iRacing are the Dallara F3 17 Formula 3 cars, which are not the same spec as the cars that run in the international series. They're actually the cars that are based on the vehicles that run in the domestic series, which means that they run 4-cylinder engines. They're actually an evolution, really, of the cars that run in the Australian Formula 3 Championship, which are the slightly older model Dallara F311s. But nevertheless, they produce a lot of downforce. They can reach extraordinarily high corner speeds, and they have a good power to weight ratio as well.
They do, and they are a lot of fun to drive. They are, in my opinion, one of the best cars at the moment in our racing, just for pure fun factor and stuff. Just as a, you know, they're reasonably high powered, they reach high speeds, the big holes get punched in the air, so slipstream's a factor, high corner speeds. They're just a lot of fun to drive, and I think that's why, I mean, this is one of, if not our biggest turnout for Just Send It in quite some time in terms of driver participation. We've got 3 full splits of, I think, about 50 drivers today. So this race, thanks to our sponsors of course, Melbourne Performance Centre, Erebus Motorsport, and JSC Technologies, is going to be an absolute cracker.
And with real-life motorsport suspended, and like I said, a lot of sporting events postponed for the time being, I think what you're going to find, Ryan, is that sim racing, whether you're a participant or a spectator, is going to be a really important escape from the very stressful times that a lot of people right around the world are going through at the moment. So I think it definitely has its part to play in that regard as well.
Yeah, but we've seen it this week. This has been one of our best ever weeks in terms of iRacing participation numbers and you know, things like that, viewer numbers, everything. I should apologize to Modem Simulation, our other sponsor for this series, but this week has already been spectacular. It's only going to grow, I think, the longer this goes on, and I can't wait to see how it all pans out.
Let's have a look at your grid positions then, and it's Gary Hamilton, one of the top sim racing open wheel competitors on pole position. Cooper Webster, he's been a prolific winner in Just Send It. He'll be on the front row. Jackson Suzlin Harlow, another regular front runner in Just Send It, out of third. And then it's the first of our pro drivers, Anton De Pasquale, Penrite Racing Supercars driver in position 4. Luca Giacomin out of 5th position, James Kutia in 6th. Jared Filsell, Jordan Murphy, Scott Kieslowski, and Cody Birch rounding out your top 10.
Blake Purdy lines up 11th, Rowan Kinnan starting 12th, Andrew Gilliam, Job Stewart on row 7, Ruben Goodall and Scotty McLean 15th and 16th, Justin Rougier, regular participant in this series, start 17th, Casey Mann 18th, Chris Owen, Wayne Burke round out that top 20.
So not too far away from a race start. Scott McLaughlin, for those of you who are fans of the DJR Team Penske driver, he'll start a bit further back in the grid, just inside the top 30. And Luca Giacomin has jumped the start by an absolute mile there, but we are underway for week 2, season 3 of Just Send It, and already carnage at the back of the pack.
Parts flying already, and cars flying too. Almost up and over the pit fence, and a big crash in turn 1 as well. And Jay's computer not handling it well.
So we turn back to the action. Luca Giacomin's your race leader, but he is going to obviously cop a penalty. We've got more wrecks back in the pack as they work their way onto the hangar straight now. The drivers will get a spare car as part of this race format, so if they sustain damage early on, they will be able to come into the pits and get that repaired. We will be seeing pit stops in this race. They only have enough fuel on board to get partway through the race, so they will have to come into the pits for a fuel stop. We expect that there may be a safety car at some point as well. But Luca Giacomin, I'm not quite sure what happened there, because he was gone about 6 or 7 seconds before the rest of the field got underway.
Yeah, I think he went as soon as the lights came on and not when they went off. So he is most certainly going to have to dive down a pit lane at some stage, as we see Anton De Pasquale here battling away with James Kutcher in front of him. Can't quite find a way by, and got to watch out. Cooper Webster actually contact with Harlow up through club, pushed him wide and has dropped him all the way back here just in front of Rowan Kinnans.
And again, wheel-to-wheel contact is not something you want, as we've got Jared Filsell involved in an incident with another competitor as well. Both of those cars they've locked wheels, and it's Hayden Dodman in the other car struggling to rejoin the racetrack. Here's a look at how it happened.
Here we go. So Dodman runs wide, clips to the grass, and off into the fence. Filsell going in tandem with him, and separate incidents, and they eventually come to a race together.
It was a weird one, wasn't it? So Jared Filsell was having his own accident and ended up in the same section of the racetrack as Dodman. Luca Giacomin leading the race by 7.3 seconds, but we are expecting him to receive the penalty. Jackson Suzlin Harlow second, Anton De Pasquale up to 3rd position ahead of James Kutia. Then it's Cooper Webster followed by Job Stewart, Justin Rougier, Scott Kieslowski, Tyler Howard and Casey Mann completing your top 10.
Cooper Webster just made a good move up the inside at club on James Kutia to take away that P4 spot. We do apologise. We'll have live pictures back to you in just a moment. Just changing a couple quick settings in light of the sheer amount of cars on this racetrack and the amount of separate parts being thrown around the track. Harlow's gone off the track and he's rejoined right in front of Cooper Webster and going to lose more spots now as he comes under fire from Job Stewart, trying to go around the outside. Got the inside, though, for the final corner and completes that move.
Scott McLaughlin's moved up into 21st position as well, so he actually did a good job. We had a shot of his car on the first corner where we saw a fair bit of carnage, and he went out wide and managed to avoid getting caught up in any sort of damage. So from where he started, he's already come up 6 positions, Scott McLaughlin. As we bring you live shots, and Anton De Pasquale comes in. Look at pit lane. It is an absolute traffic jam down in the pits at the moment.
Completely full of cars, and drivers do need to make a pit stop in this race. So probably scheduled that one for Anton and get himself out of traffic, potentially into some clean air. See how that plays out. Kyochiman still has it pitted too, interestingly. But look at this huge train of cars, a spin in the background. James Kuchi is going off, and he's missing most of the rear assembly of his machine. He was running 4th before that.
So he'll be another driver heading back to the pits. It just goes to show how fragile these Formula 3 cars are with this new damage model. And he's another driver who's going to make a mistake all on his own. He got off the racing line. Oh my goodness me. And as he's accelerated and spun the rear tyres to try and get back into the action, he has been collected at a great rate of knots by another car.
And Justin Ridgier elevates himself up in to 5th place. Job Stewart now for 3rd, trying to make things happen again. The outside route gonna work out for him. Harlow will lose out, so Harlow's actually attacking Job Stewart here, because of course Stewart got by him on the last lap, didn't he, Lockie? And coming under a lot of fire now from Harlow.
So Job Stewart was our winner last week in week number 1. Jackson Suzlin, Harlow and Cooper Webster, they're both race winners, as well as we said that Luca Giacomin has headed into the pits for what you would have to say would be a penalty for that jump start.
Yeah, most certainly he won't be contending, I don't think, for the race win, unless of course we get a safety car at some stage. Never know whether that's going to happen or not. And so that means that Webster and co now actually fighting for the lead of the race. And
where's all the DJR Team Penske fans, and where's all the Penrite Erebus fans? At the moment, you don't get to cheer your drivers on in real life, but you can cheer them on in the virtual world instead. Anton De Pasquale currently running a bit further down the order after making a pit stop. Scott McLaughlin continues his march forward. He started 27th on the grid. He's up to 15th position.
Look at Lockie Hughes and Jay Hansen for P10 here, just ahead of Scott McLaughlin on the racetrack, was making their way through Vale, almost side by side a second ago. I think Hansen has a lot of pressure coming onto the back of him now from Lockie Hughes, who's no stranger to driving this style of race car.
No, because he's competed in the Australian F4 Championship in the past. Jay Hansen, another driver with open wheel experience. He was a race winner in the Australian Formula Ford Championship last year. And Jay Hansen just sitting one spot ahead of Lockie Hughes at the moment. We saw him on the podium in the Legend car last week. Jay Hansen, he's a driver who just gets better and better with all of the sim racing experience that he's accumulating in the various competitions at the moment.
Yeah, Jay Hansen certainly one to watch, both sim-wise and real world as well. Oh, snap of oversteer. Tyler Howard fires himself into the fence through turn 1. Left side of that car completely destroyed.
That's an interesting spot to go off, because there is actually a fair bit of runoff out there. So as he's hit the AstroTurf, Tyler Howard, the car has snapped sideways to the left, and he hasn't been able to react quickly enough, and that's why he's ended up in the barrier.
Fortunate then for him, as we watch here back in P26, another of our supercar drivers in the field, Scott Pye, just run wide, might lose this spot to the number 16, trying to sweep around the outside at the final corner. Jared Filsell, of course it is, only he could manage that.
That was a great move, wasn't it? Fully committed around the outside. That's one of the things about these open wheel race cars, is that it is possible to make spectacular outside overtaking manoeuvres like that, just because of the sheer corner speed that these cars carry. And you said at the top of the broadcast, Ryan, that you can go flat through turn number 1. The problem is, we've seen it a couple of times, if you hit the AstroTurf at the wrong angle, you'll lose traction, and that can cause you to have a bit of an awkward moment on the exit of that corner.
Yeah, curiously, no one's actually done it yet. You can't go flat and keep it within track limits. You can run very wide and gain a lot of time by going flat out. When I was testing, I got no slowdowns. Whether that's different in this particular race, I don't know, because we haven't seen anyone do it. Maybe no one's been brave enough to try it. Ooh, that looks a very bit close. Who was that? There you go, in the background, there's a couple cars that are doing it. And there you go, if you get it wrong, it ends like that. Zach Bates.
Another drive with real world open wheel experience, the son of rally ace Rick Bates, but he's gone off the road. See what I mean about you drop all 4 wheels onto the AstroTurf, it unsettles the car, and unfortunately for Zach Bates, it's fired him into the inside wall.
about as much grip as an ice rink out there on that AstroTurf in these machines. Not too much tread, or much tread, any tread really, in these tyres that can dig in and try to bite into some firm ground. So not going to work it. Look up here in P3. Job Stewart has fallen back, and Justin Rigier on the attack. Dummies him, goes to the inside. They'll be flat out here under the bridge too. This could be very close between them. Rigier going to try and sweep around the outside. Can't quite do it. Still got an overlap though. And he's going to pick him off up the inside now and moves up into P3.
And the other driver who's well placed to take advantage of that will be Scott Kozlowski, who's moved up several positions since the start of this race. We're right on board with him now. He's going to be on the outside as they head into the final corner, tucks back into the slipstream of Job Stewart, who, and at this point, Scott Kozlowski will get the double toe from both Job Stewart and Justin Rugia as they cross the start-finish line and head into turn 1 to commence another lap. And look how close Kozlowski gets to the back of Job Stewart's car as they negotiate their way through that first turn. And now they'll get into the section of the circuit where the point that I was making earlier on about aero wash comes into play. The drivers will start to feel their cars getting a little bit unsettled by the turbulent air from the car in front.
Yeah, that section of track, probably one of the worst for that turbulent air. Thankfully, it's followed by this hangar straight, the biggest piece of straight racetrack on the circuit. Best opportunity to slipstream and gain some time back. Can make a move up in the club if you get close enough. Sazlowski wasn't close enough that time by the Marlborough livery car for Trek Esports. And that first left here of Vale is flat out, but you've got to lift off to get it back to the right. Very tricky to get the power down at the right time. Get a good exit onto this straight, which leads on to 2 flat out corners. Oh, who's that?
So we've got another car off the road. We've just cut back to a shot of Scott McLaughlin, but Emerson Harvey in the number 46 car has had a crash, and that is going to cause a safety car interruption. So the caution comes out. Not a lot of drivers have done pit stops at this stage, so this is really going to mix things up in terms of how the rest of this race plays out.
Of all the crashes we've seen, this brings out the safety car here, Lockie. Curious? Let's see. Oh, onto the grass. Got it wrong. Ended up on the right. Where's he going? That's gone for a wild ride. And the right rear has actually been torn off by the little seam between the tarmac and the grass there.
So, Emerson Harvey, obviously what he was trying to do there is keep his foot on the accelerator and get back onto the racetrack with minimum time loss possible. But unfortunately, it's backfired for him and it's damaged his car. So, we do now have the safety car out on the circuit. And what we've seen, Ryan, in previous editions of Just Send It, is that if there is a safety car, you want to have your pit stop out of the way because you're not allowed to pit during a safety car interruption. At the moment, the highest place of the cars that's done a pit stop is Luke Giacomin. We suspect that that was a penalty and that he's going to have to come back in. The next highest placed car that's had a pit visit is Jack Hotter, who sits in 19th position at the moment ahead of Cody Bircher, Dylan Shepherd and Anton De Pasquale.
Yeah, I think we will see drivers come into pit lane. I think from past experience, you should be eligible for it unless the admins are going to close it off. We should see everyone dive down, but you're exactly right. People that have pitted getting a massive advantage out of this, and bad news for Cooper Webster because out front, just getting away a little bit. Sneaking away from the drivers, Lockie, he was starting to hold a pretty handy margin out there. Of course, that's all been wiped away now, and he's probably going to find himself buried in the pack if he comes into pit lane here.
So just to clarify the rules on pit lane. So as soon as the safety car is deployed, the pit lane closes until the field is bunched up behind the safety car. The pit lane then opens to allow people who want to take pit stops to be able to take them. So if you've already done your pit stop before the safety car comes out, you have an advantage because you get to catch up to the back of the train behind the safety car.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Slightly different to real life, isn't it, Lockie? Of course, we see cars diving in a pit lane as soon as there's even a hint of a safety car, often in real life in supercars, most notably, which is very interesting in terms of strategy. Unfortunately, we don't get to see it here in iRacing, and you do kind of get screwed a bit, don't you, to be quite blunt, when a caution comes out, you haven't pitted. But that's the things you've got to think of here in sim racing, and these drivers are very experienced on iRacing. Webster, Harlow, Ridger, they knew the risk they were taking with the potential of a safety car in Just Send It, which has happened, I think, almost every race to this point. So, going to be very fun to see how they navigate their way back through the field here.
And also interesting to see who comes into the pits. And I'll tell you what, the answer to that question might be everybody. Look at the train of cars diving into the pits. I'll tell you what, Ryan, it's probably going to be quicker for us and easier for us to list the drivers that don't choose to come into the pits under this safety car.
And I can tell you that everyone that's one lap down is getting a wave around the pace car as well. So good news for drivers who run into some issues and then stuck it out after towing back to the lane and getting back out there. They're going to get their lap back. They still got a chance to fight in this one.
It's going to be a race off pit lane here. So this is going to completely mix up the order. Be interesting to see how much fuel everybody...
Oh, they crashed coming out of pit road. Cooper Webster, huge damage to his car.
Wow, and he was going to be in the box seat for a really good result in this race as well, so that's a disaster. We've got other cars that are actually getting damaged in pit lane as well. Let's just check out a replay. The desperation to get out of the pits. Wow. So they've had nose-to-tail contacts coming out of pit lane. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Job Stewart. Yeah. So Webster's actually gone a little bit too deep and actually gone into the barrier on the left-hand side. It's bounced him straight back out into Job Stewart. I'm going to get it on board here from the Pursuit Sim Racing driver, and those uneven mirrors are going to eternally haunt my nightmares as we have a look. There he goes, into the fence. I mean, how unlucky can you get if you're Job Stewart?
Well, exactly, because it was Cooper Webster who made the initial mistake and grazed the wall on the outside. And because Job Stewart was so close behind, he just didn't have anywhere to go except hard into the back of Cooper Webster's car. Anyway, we do now have a cleansed field behind the safety car. And it's Cody Bircher who leads ahead of Dylan Shepherd and Anton De Pasquale. So the order, as we suspected, has been completely mixed up. Jared Filsell fourth, Scott Pye up to fifth position, would you believe, after starting 53rd, and he's pitted, so he's made up 48 spots. And then it's Brian Borg, Justin Ruggier, Jackson Suzel and Harlow, Trent Thomas, and Chris Owen completing the top 10.
Scott McLaughlin's not too far out of the top 10 either. He's running in 17th, so bit of chaos, who knows? He's not quite out of it. We know he's got talent, so we'll see how he goes if you're on Team Penske watch. And new damage model, and something that's not quite new anymore, but the new tyre model of these cars, you're seeing everyone weaving because tyre temp is so important, especially at an open wheeler.
That might have been one of the things that caught out Cooper Webster there on the exit of pit lane as well, Ryan, particularly if he chose to put tyres on during that pit stop. They might not have been up to temperature when he accelerated out of pit lane, and that might have been a contributing factor to that incident.
I think you're probably right on that one. I can tell you one thing though, this restart is going to be manic. They're going to be single file, which will provide some relief, but at the same time it means they're going to be very strung out in terms of a big snake when they get to the hangar straight here. And I think some drivers may be under big pressure of getting absolutely freight trained. As Cody Bircher jumps on that throttle, we're back underway in Silverstone. This is going to be a thrilling conclusion.
So it's Cody Bircher, who's had race victories at National Formula 4 level here in Australia, ahead of Dylan Shepherd, and then Anton De Pasquale, who's under some pressure from Jared Filsell as they negotiate their way through turn number one. We hold our breath, we cast our eye a bit further back in the pack because this is very much the danger zone and the danger time just after a safety car restart with the field so tightly bunched together.
That is actually a remarkably clean start from everyone through turn one. At least someone went straight ahead through that complex, as now look at this for P number 2. Dylan Shepherd's got Anton De Pasquale to his inside as they come uphill here on the run into club. And I'll tell you what, Jared Filsell's going to poke his nose up the inside too, and he's going to get by him. So Dylan Shepherd gets mowed down by 2 there in a space of about 10 metres.
Really good move there from Anton De Pasquale to get the job done there and move up into second position. His sights will now be set on Cody Bircher. Again, this is what I talked about. The young guns, the future stars of the sport, getting their chance to race whale to whale against some of the established legends who race at the very top level.
Exactly right. This is why sim racing is so brilliant. This is why we love it. But Pasquale's not going to have it all his way in his quest to chase down Bircher, which he is already doing. Philcell is going right with him. And behind, you can see the battles unfolding for the rest of the field. Someone's gone for a spin out into the dirt. That's George Mediki, another face from the real world, making an appearance today. He's had a bit of an unfortunate accident here, coming through under the bridge, clips the grass, and we've seen that already today. Luckily, he kept it out of the fence.
Indeed, he did. We've seen some other drivers have similar incidents and end up with 3 or less wheels on their race car. So George Mediki, fortunate to get away with that one. But the battle is well and truly on for the lead because Anton De Pasquale has made up some time on Cody Bircher, and Jared Philcell is catching both of our race leaders. So it's a genuine 3-way contest for the lead here in Week 2, Season 3 of Just Send It.
Look at the train for 7th place. Oh no, they're 3 wide on the approach to club. Oh, Brian Ball goes from the middle to the outside, loses 2 spots, may lose more. They're 3 wide behind him. That's Trent Thomas trying to find a way through. Wayne Burke around the very outside. Somehow they sort themselves out. Scott Sislowski's in there as well. Coming out of the head of that big train is Justin Rougier, almost being pushed along by Chris Owen, and someone's lost it in the back.
And just to clarify as well, so the Brian Borg car is running the same livery as Scott McLaughlin, so don't get mixed up. That's Lockie Hughes there having a spin and managing to get off the circuit and out of harm's way before the next train of cars comes through. But it's well and truly on here for positions 6 down to about 10. Harrison Dengate, who's back there in 13th position with a big sideways moment on the second to last corner as he struggles to get the power down and manages to arm wrestle the car back into a straight line.
And Scott McLaughlin's latched onto the back of this train of cars too. Back there in 16th place. Just lost out to Lucia Gertman, who, well, still running around up in a pretty decent spot. We'll see whether he needs to make another pit stop in this one as he spits up some grass into Scotty's visor. You do get tear-offs, of course, in these open-wheel cars, so not too much of an issue, unless, of course, you forget to set that button for your tear-off. Then you've got a pretty dirty screen you're looking at by the end of the race, as this pretty much stretches from 7th place down to about 17th or 18th.
And Scotty McLaughlin will be on the attack. He'll be looking to make up some positions and capitalise on these drivers battling for position in front, as we see Scott Keselowski looking to the inside of Brian Borg, who's going to get hung out to dry here. It just shows you when you get forced off the racing line how quickly the grip runs out. Brian Borg's managed to hang tough, and he's managed to only lose 1 position out of that one, but Wayne Burke will be looking to set up for an overtaking manoeuvre. Here they go, side by side, down into the next sequence of turns.
Yeah, made a little bit of a mistake through that right-hander, run a bit wide, offered up the inside to Wayne Burke, but as they go through bridge, if he can keep the nose there, he should be good, but Wayne Burke dives through and takes that spot away. Very well done from him. And now look behind at Andrew Gilliam, trying to make things happen. Oh no, contact, around goes one of the cars, Dengate off the track as well. That's Gilliam who goes off, and that's a big shame.
Gilliam had to take evasive action there to make sure that there wasn't contact, and we've got the battle well and truly on for the lead. We'll come back to that because I mentioned that it was compressing at the front of the field. It is now throw a blanket over the top 3 cars. Cody Bircher, Anton De Pasquale and Jared Philcell covered by just 7/10 of a second.
And Cody Bircher will be looking in those mirrors, just praying that Philcell gets alongside Pasquale and starts to hold him up. And Philcell, very smart driver. Oh no, Scotty Mack's gone around in the background, and it looks like he might actually be out of this race. That's a big shame. What happened to him? We'll get a quick replay up. Through turn 1, onto that dreaded AstroTurf, and hard into the fence. No longer a front left tyre on that car, and no, that's a shame. His run comes to the end with 16 minutes still to play.
That's not something you see very often. Scott McLaughlin making a mistake all on his own. He had clear track at that stage as well. And here is a replay. This is a move for second position. Jared Filsell gets the job done on Anton De Pasquale. So Jared Filsell up to second place.
And if they're smart, they won't keep battling. They'll just get themselves to the back of Cody Birch, and then they can resume their fight. Apparently, Filsell still needs to pit too, so he's not really in this race-winning battle, but he's certainly playing a wild card in it, putting himself in between Bircher and Pasquale. We'll see how this unfolds as the laps continue to tick by and the clock continues to tick down here at Silverstone of 2008, as we see still plenty of cars battling away inside the top 10. That's Chris Owen thinking about a move on Scott Pye, thinking better of it, and now running wide. He keeps it on the racetrack just about. That AstroTurf catching so many people out today.
Now, timing says that there's a lot of cars that have done a pit stop. In fact, every car in the field has done a pit stop, but we know that some of those pit stops were very early, so potentially there's a question mark over some drivers about whether they'll have the fuel range to make it all the way to the finish.
Indeed, here goes Chris Owen. Gonna go around the outside of Scott Binder Club. No, gonna try the crossover. Great driving, gets that spot. Pye goes too deep, Rigier goes by, and Sizlowski's gonna try and capitalise too. Round the outside at Vale. He'll have the inside, he'll have the spot, but Pye's got other things to say about that. He's fighting back around the outside. This is great stuff from Pye. Now, he's got that fighting spirit. He's not gonna let this one go easy.
Worth remembering as well that for Scott Pye, before he raced supercars here in Australia...
No.
Oh, I'll come back to that point later because there's just been contact which has seen Scott Pye go flying off the racetrack and into the barriers. And that's another one of our full-time supercar drivers out of business tonight.
I've got to say, the pros really do get a rough time of it when they come racing sometimes, don't they? And here we go, Scott Pye under the bridge, contact, and once you're onto that gravel, that car did not even look like it slowed down.
I have to say there that Scott Pye turned in when there was a car that was side by side with him. So Scott Pye probably should have given that other car a little bit more room there to ensure that they were both able to get around the corner.
Everyone makes mistakes, and Scott Pye, I'm sure, will learn from that one. As Scott Sizlowski continues his battles.
I think that's our biggest failed send of the night, Ryan.
Yeah, I think you're probably right with that one.
Very good evening as well to one of my real-life racing colleagues in terms of the commentary side of things, Dave Stillwell. He's tuning into tonight's broadcast. Dave, we also see racing in real life. Maybe we'll see him competing in some Just Send It races in the future as we look back at Aaron Borg, last year's Toyota 86 racing champion here in Australia. He's currently running in 12th position.
And just behind him, Ian Lake now going to try and get by Sizlowski. This is where we saw the contact with Scott Pye, but it looks like Sizlowski's going to back out of it, but probably shouldn't have done that because Gary Hamilton sweeps on by, and Hamilton was actually our pole sitter, so he's got serious pace, but not had the rub of the grain in terms of how his race has actually played out.
And good to see Scott McLaughlin back out on the racetrack as well, Ryan. So he's come into the pits. He's obviously taken the opportunity to grab that spare car. And,
oh no! Filsell, Bircher, both off the track. Where's Pasquale? He goes by Filsell. Bircher rejoins. He might have a slowdown to clear though. This is going to be on because Bircher potentially with a slowdown and slipstream for Pasquale. He's not even trying to get in that slipstream. He's got the run, and Pasquale goes to the lead.
So, obviously, Filsell had caught Bircher. They were battling, and we can see that Cody Birch is still obviously serving that slowdown penalty, but he comes back down the inside of Filsell. These two cars now battling over what will be second position as they head into the final sequence of corners on this Silverstone circuit.
Got to say, I do question whether Filsell has pitted or not. You obviously mentioned timing screen, so everyone has. The way he's racing, I would suggest he has. Otherwise, be a little bit disappointed. if I was Cody Bircher, who's trying to come back under the bridge side by side through here. And this is just giving bucket loads of time to Jackson Harlow, who almost got his front wing to the inside of Bircher there. And Pascali now bottled up behind he's bottled up behind Scott McLaughlin,
who was now obviously a lap down, but does the right thing. Scott McLaughlin steps to the side and allows De Pasquale safe passage through on the exit of the final corner, but the battle is on for positions 2, 3 and 4 because Jackson Suzlin Harlow now part of that freight train as well. As they duck and weave, they look to try and break each other's slipstream as they run into turn 1. Once again, McLaughlin has to step to the side to allow these battling cars clear passage.
Did you see how close Phil Sell's right front got to the left rear of Scotty Mac's car there? Oh no, Bircher! It's gone from bad to worse for him in the last 2 laps. In the last lap even, and he goes around. And now he's well and truly out of the fight for the lead. I reckon Phil Sell was about a paper's width from getting into the left rear of Scotty Mac. That was incredibly close.
So what happened there for Cody Birch was McLaughlin now gets sent as well by one of those cars. And for a second time, the DJR Team Penske Formula 3 is in the fence and with damage.
That was an even bigger crash for him. And it was Dylan Shepherd right in behind him on the brakes, just tagged his right rear. And you can actually see the new damage model. That right rear was actually broken from that bit of contact, and he went spitting off. And well, now it's even more broken, isn't it? It's not even on the car anymore. But that's how fragile the new damage model can be as well. And unfortunately, Scott McLaughlin, another driver that incidents seem to be compounding for at the moment.
He was already a lap down, but the question that you have to ask is, we know that you get one spare car, but do you get a second one?
I don't think so. I guess we'll wait and see if he comes back out on the racetrack. Look at this battle. At the very back of it is Gary Hamilton around the outside of Ian Lake at the final corner. Didn't quite get the run he would have wanted. And just in front is Cody Bircher as well, trying to make it work on Rob Bowden. We watched on board for a moment there from Hamilton, and we now see him back out, actually switch back. He's on the outside of the track again. See if he can keep his car alongside as we head through Magus and Beckett. So now he backs out of it and tucks in line.
Cody Bircher will be pretty angry, you would imagine, after getting turfed off the racetrack on the previous lap. So he'll be fired up and he'll be looking to try and make up some positions in the closing stages of this race.
Yeah, nothing to lose now for Bircher. He can just go out there and just absolutely launch it up the inside as Hamilton again trying on Ian Lake. I see what Lake's doing a good job of defending here. And oh, no, there he goes. Runs a little bit wide. The slightest mistake is all that Gary Hamilton needs to make up another spot. I love Cody Bircher in front of him. Dare say Bircher will put up one heck of a fight. As you mentioned, probably a little bit hot and bothered under the collar right now after this incident. Blake Purdy missing his nose cone. He's had an almighty crash as well by the looks of it.
He was one of the front runners last week in the Legend car. We know that he races the miniature race car series that runs as part of the Australian Motor Racing series as well. Another driver just a step slightly offline, get caught out by some of the bumps in these low-slung Formula 3 cars, and he ends up in the fence and with significant damage. So with some of the damage that we've seen at the front of the field involving some of our main contenders, Ryan, it's opened up the way for the likes of Dylan Shepherd and Chris Owen to work their way into some pretty solid positions.
Certainly has. They're battling it out for fourth place. Shepherd up from 39th on the grid. Definitely going to be a challenger for our best postman. I think Brian Borg, 45th to 9th, will be in that picture too. I'm not going to try to do that math in my head because it's just not going to happen for us. But a lot of drivers have moved up. A couple of drivers have moved up some big spots in this race at the moment. And we watch this battle back here, but Pascali out front is only got about 7/10 back to Phil Sell. That battle's just on the verge of becoming boiling point between them if Phil Sell gets a little bit closer.
That's going to get hot between first and second because after those incidents involving Phil Sell and Cody Bircher, where Phil Sell lost a bit of time battling, he fell back to about a second and a half behind De Pasquale, but he's got back a fair bit of that margin. Here it is on screen. There is Anton De Pasquale, your race leader. There is Jared Phil Sell in second position, one of the best real-life racing drivers in Australia, set to battle it out with one of the best sim racing drivers in Australia in what's shaping up as a grandstand finish here in the final 6 minutes for Wake 2, Season 3 have just ended here at Silverstone.
And Jackson Harlow, I would argue, is one of the most promising young talents in Australia too. And he's got talent both real and virtual. So see what he can do. He's been out of the picture. He's only 1.4 off the back of them as they head through this very fast, sweeping, almost slalom part of the circuit that's become very famous and synonymous with Silverstone, that Maggots and Beckett section. The lead now down to half a second. Both of them catching Pascali. He's not quite got the pace he needs at the moment.
In third place, Jackson Suzel Harlow is the fastest driver on the racetrack at the moment. 1 minute 34.6 his lap time last time around, which was 2/10 quicker than Phil Sell and half a second quicker than De Pasquale. So Suzel and Harlow will catch up to these top two runners before we get to the end of the race. And then it's going to become a case of racecraft and overtaking, setting up the manoeuvre and going for what we like to see in this series, big sends.
I think you're absolutely right with that one, and the battle's not done with yet either for fourth place. Shepherd and Owen, we touched on them just a moment ago. They're still going hard at it. Owen's just out of striking range at the moment, about as far back from Shepherd as Phil Sellers from Pascali. Closing up drastically through this final little sector of the track is the slowest on the circuit, and Chris Owen making every bit of use of it.
Interesting to say the different lines that the drivers take through that corner. Some of them hold a tight line all the way around what is a fairly long right-hander. The other drivers tend to make it more of a single apex corner where they'll start out wide and then they'll clip the apex quite late in the corner. As we go back to another good battle that's happening, Justin Ruggier, very, very consistent performer. We know that he's very good in real life as well as in sim racing. Aussie Racing Car champion last year. Only win championships in other categories, including the V8 Touring Cars and the Australian Endurance Championship over the years as well. But here's the battle for the top three positions. 4 minutes remaining, and it is nose to tail. De Pasquale, Phil Sell, and Suzel Harlow.
Last lap, Harlow took 4/10 out of Pascali. Phil Sell took 2.5 out of him. Pascali on a 35 flat. He needs more time than that, but I think it's too late now. But if he does improve, because Phil Sell is in his slipstream, Harlow is in Phil Sell's slipstream. They're right together now. Next time we come through the hangar straight, I reckon these three are going to be covered by nothing at all. Right now, they're covered by less than a second as they dive down out of the bridge and come back up to the stadium section of the track now, and heading towards the final point on the circuit. I think we're only going to have, 2 laps to go?
I reckon it will be 2 laps to go when they cross the start-finish line. This time around, De Pasquale exits the final corner. And this is the sort of pressure that Anton De Pasquale is used to dealing with, being in the lead of motor races, having drivers chasing him and trying to overtake from behind. And it's going to be up to De Pasquale to keep it mistake-free in this final couple of laps and make sure that he gives his rivals no chance whatsoever to overtake. Up into the very, very fast and flowing direction changes through Maggots and Beckett's. They come once again. As I mentioned, this is the section of the circuit where the turbulent air comes into play, and Justin Ruggier's made up a spot as well. He's managed to get around Chris Owen up into the top 5.
So Ruggier continues to improve. He might get to 4th place too. It's 2 3-car battles down hangar straight. And Pascali, he's got Phil Sell lurking ever closer in his mirror. But Phil Sell looks like he's struggling a bit for some grip. He slid out of the final corner. He slid through club there as well. And he's just losing out in crucial parts of the track, like that corner they just went through. Harlow getting quite close to the back of him now as well.
As they headed through turn 7 there, Stowe corner, you could see that Jared Phil Sell was a bit wider than the ideal line, but he was able to carry plenty of mid-corner speed. The thing here for Jared Phil Sell is he can't get too preoccupied with trying to overtake Anton De Pasquale, because one slip-up and Jackson Suzel and Harlow will be right there waiting to pounce, waiting to capitalise. Through the last corner they come for what will be the second last occasion here in Just Send It, so it's going to be one final lap. One last overtaking opportunity for the drivers. They're going to get across the line with about 1:30 to go, so they're going to finish this race only about 4 seconds after the time has elapsed. But look at Phil Sell. He has got a mega run through turn 1. Jackson Suzel and Harlow right out over the AstroTurf. He looks to carry as much mid-corner speed as possible. Here comes Jared Phil Sell. He is right on the tail of Anton De Pasquale as they head through Maggots and Beckett's for the final time. He'll look to try and get into the slipstream on Hanger Straight and set up for a move down the inside into turn 7 at Stowe. If not the inside, maybe the outside. We've seen some big committed moves through that corner, and De Pasquale knows that he moves across to the white line to the right-hand side, and here comes Phil Sell with the big send to the outside. But can he pull it up? No, he can't. He runs wide. He runs off the racing line, and he runs out of road. He had a crack, Jared Phil Sell, but he wasn't quite able to get the job done.
That was a huge lunge around the outside. I thought for a moment he'd done it. He just got a little bit loose and a bit of oversteer in the middle of the corner. Had to correct and lost out, but it's not done with yet as they come through under the bridge. Pasquale is still under pressure. Phil Sell lunges ever closer through there. Not quite close enough. Is it going to come down to the final corner? As they come through the penultimate corner on the circuit. Look at Harlow throwing it in the background too. He can't get there. Pasquale's got one more corner to navigate. Phil Sell almost pushing on his gearbox, but as they come out of the final corner, Anton De Pasquale holds on with an absolute thriller here in Silverstone.
What an absolute cracker of a finish, but in the battle of real-life racing drivers versus sim racers, it's the real world that prevails today. It's Penrite Erebus racing driver Anton De Pasquale who emerges victorious in Week 2, Season 3 of Just Send It here at Silverstone. Congratulations to Anton De Pasquale. He takes the win by 0.2 of a second ahead of Jared Phil Sell. Less than a second separating the top 3 cars at the finish line. And Justin Ruggier has fallen from 5th back to 11th on the final lap. And this is why contact there with another competitor, that was Wayne Burke, who got into the back of Justin Ruggier. And that was why Ruggier went tumbling down the order on the very last lap of the race.
And you see from the onboard here with Wayne Burke, it looks like he just ran a bit wide, and he did just scrubbed a bit wide in the middle of the corner, and front wheel a little bit broken for him. It looks like, potentially, I can throw the left rear on Ruggier's car was most certainly broken, and Wayne Burke lost some spots from that as well, and the rest of the field goes through. He actually redressed the spot, or attempted to. Did Ruggier actually cross? He did. So Ruggier managed to cross the line even with 3 wheels on the car. And Burke redressed it, which is good to see, Lockie.
Good sportsmanship there from Wayne Burke on the final lap as Justin Ruggier decides. I mean, in sim racing, we don't have burnouts, do we, after the race? We just have drivers trying to have the most spectacular shunts that they possibly can. Like that.
Oh, I reckon that's the best end of the week. What an impact. That's the new damage model in full effect right there, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely spectacular crashes that thankfully in sim racing we can admire because no one gets hurt.
So Anton De Pasquale, the race winner ahead of Jared Phil Sell and Jackson Suzel and Harlow. The best postman award for the night goes the way of Brian Borg. He came from 45th on the grid up to 7th place, a gain of 38 positions, if you don't mind.
Very good job from him, and he was racing towards the front of the field for most of that race, wasn't he? So he picked up those spots pretty early on for the Premier Esports racing team, and you see there the full unofficial results from Silverstone, and that was one of the best races we've seen in Just Send It, I reckon.
What a finish. How good was that battle between Anton De Pasquale and Jared Phil Sell on the last lap? The big attempt by Jared Phil Sell to take De Pasquale on the outside, heading into Stowe Corner, turn number 7. Couldn't quite get the job done, but he certainly had a crack at it. Anton De Pasquale had to work hard for that race win, but in the end he comes away as a well-deserved race victor. And we know, of course, that the Virgin Australia Supercars Championship are going to be running the official Supercars E-Series, which will consist of all of the Supercars Championship competitors, and you would have to say that Anton De Pasquale is going to be a red-hot contender for that one.
think you're certainly right about that. Can't wait to see real live action get back underway and see those guys back out on the track. But it's good to see them running around here on iRacing. Going to see plenty more of it as the weeks unfold in the coming month on and so on. Going to be a fantastic time for sim racing, and great to see these guys in Just Send It as well.
Some big names finishing down the order. Scott McLaughlin back there classified in 33rd position. And we saw the contra top on the exit of pit lane as well, involving Cooper Webster, who was one of our front-running contenders, as he always is in the Just Send It series. Other big names that struck dramas included Scott Pye and Jay Hansen. They're drivers who you'll be seeing on your sim racing TV or laptop screens in the coming weeks, because they'll both be participating in some of the, I suppose, what do we say, the exclusively for real world drivers contests that are being organised in the coming weeks.
Yeah, certainly. Supercars E-Series here in Australia, the ARG E-Series as well. Plenty more internationally. IndyCar setting up an E-Series, NASCAR as well. And I'm sure there's more categories as well. And Porsche Super Cup actually kicking itself off underway. Words. With 4 Australians contending that World Championship. And that's going to be an absolute crack too. Make sure you tune into that as well on iRacing to cheer on some of our fellow Australians, such as Dane Warren and Joshua Rogers, Josh Anderson, and Jared Filsell as well.
I reckon we need to get Matt Campbell to go in that one as well,
Yes.
because he's not going to be able to race in real life for a little while. And obviously, he has some experience competing in Porsche Super Cup in the real world. And apparently Max Verstappen will be another big name from the real world who'll be potentially racing in that series as well. So that's all to look forward to. I'll tell you what, the SimSpeed TV network's going to be getting very busy, not just with lots of racing events to cover, but lots of people tuning in to get their motorsport fix, because it is where all of the entertainment is at when it comes to motorsport for the next couple of months. But I hope you enjoyed tonight's edition of the Just Send It E-Series. Big thanks to our sponsors, Melbourne Performance Centre, Motum Simulation and Erebus Motorsport. You've been watching it right here on the SimSpeed TV network. On behalf of Ryan Jones, I'm Lachlan Mansell. See you next time. Bye for now.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rhythm, both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my god!
big crash. Oh my goodness, half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Yeah. I'm ready to play now. Put me in the game now. I came here to prove it. I'm ready to do it. I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now. I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage and I'm ready to break out. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop.